Take a look out the window. Spirit goes up.
Everybody, so I hope you're well and having the most incredible day. As always, welcome back to my channel. I hope you guys are doing well. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you the 8 books that I read throughout November, and honestly, I feel like November wasn't the best reading month for me. I mean, don't get me wrong, if you read one book a month, if you read one book a year, that is absolutely incredible. Keep on reading. But for me, 8 books was not my best. However, there was one book in here which was a little bit more on the chunky side, and I don't know really why I didn't read as many. I just didn't. But I thought I would share with you the 8 books I read in November, my thoughts, opinions, and all that kind of stuff as well. So without further ado, I am going to dive right in. I hope you guys enjoy and carry on watching. So the first book I read in November was Right Girl, Wrong Side by Ginny. Is it Bayard or Bard? I'm not too sure how to pronounce their name. I do apologise. This one wasn't overall my favourite. I gave this one a 2-star and it just didn't really captivate me as much as I thought. So you have Evita and you have Ryan, and essentially what happens is both of their kind of families are like enemies, if you will. They just don't like each other, so they don't get on very well, and they essentially both book to go to this Airbnb, and somehow they both book the same time, and they decide that they're just all gonna stay there, kind of live their separate lives, but just all enjoy this trip. Or did they win it? I can't quite remember. It was something along those lines, and essentially, as you can imagine, these two characters start liking each other, but the rest of the families just don't get on. It was just a very like Romeo Juliet kind of vibe. I didn't really love any of the characters. That is why I give it a 2-star. Like, it was a very easy read, and if you want just something that you can read where there's like not much spice and there's not an awful lot of plot, this is a really good book. There just wasn't anything captivating me in this book, and as you can imagine, spoiler alert, they obviously end up falling in love and the families end up getting along, and that is kind of the end of the book. So I gave it a 2-star overall. It wasn't my absolute favourite. It was just a nice book, but I just didn't feel like, I don't feel any need to read it ever again, so I probably won't. But that was the first book I read in November. The next book I picked up was my book club pick of the month with my 2 friends Becky and Becky, and it was my turn this month, and I picked My Dark Romeo by Parker S. Huntington and LJ Shen. Now this book I gave a 4-star. I actually really enjoyed it. There were bits of this book I didn't particularly like, and if you've read this book you will know there are a few things that the girl character Dallas does that I just don't particularly agree with. However, I really did like Romeo. I thought he was a very fun character. It was definitely a grumpy sunshine, Beauty and the Beast kind of story. Essentially, Romeo tricks Dallas into becoming his wife. It's a bit of a weird one because it's based in present day, but the people in the town are very traditional, as in you can't be kissing a boy if you're not going to get married and that kind of thing. So essentially, Romeo and Dallas have like a little intimate moment which gets seen by everybody, and then Dallas and Romeo end up getting married basically, and she feels trapped and she doesn't want to be there, but obviously things happen, and it's kind of like I mean, he's like a billionaire. She also has quite a lot of money in her family. So it's one of those weird situations. Like, I did really like this story. There were just a few bits in this I didn't like. I gave it a 4-star. I won't tell you any more about it, but I love the covers, and I definitely will be picking up the second one, which I think comes out next year. So it is on my list, and I did quite like that one a lot. The next book was Married at First Swipe by Claire Frost. Now, I'm not gonna lie to you, this book was not my favourite. I gave this one a 1-star. I feel like that's really harsh now looking back at it. It just wasn't my favourite. I got this one from 66 Books. It's the sort of book you could pick up in the works, very inexpensive, not a lot happened. So essentially in this one you have got Hannah and Toby, and the kind of plot with this is that Hannah, she works for like an online, I don't know if it's like a blog or a magazine or something, and to make things interesting she decides to basically get married before meeting somebody. So her best friend takes loads of boys on interviews and then picks somebody for her to marry, and then they get married and they start to get to know each other. And I just feel like nothing really happened. Like, I didn't overly love the characters. I didn't feel any heartache or any joy. I didn't kick my feet when I was reading it, so it was just a bit average. So I gave it a 1-star, which now looking back I do feel really mean about, but it's just my opinion. It wasn't for me. There was no spice, but it just, nothing happened. I feel like nothing really went along in this story, and I would not read it again. So that is another book I read this month month. I'm glad it's off my TBR because my TBR, as you guys know, is huge. But yeah, it just wasn't a fave, so I didn't love that one. Now let's move on to a book which I absolutely loved, and that was The Housemaid's Secret by Frida McFadden. Now I loved The Housemaid. I gave it a 5-star, and I gave this one a 5-star as well. It was so incredibly good. So this one is also about Millie. Essentially, she goes to another family to clean their house. If you haven't read the first book, I won't spoil it too much, but this definitely gave me like Verity vibes, and the ending, I did not see it coming. The plot twists, I did not see coming, and I feel like I was just floored. Like, I did not expect anything to happen in this book. I thought I knew what was going on, and it was completely not what I thought was going on, but I absolutely loved this. It was so good. If you want to start reading a few thrillers, I highly recommend The Housemaid and The Housemaid's Secret by Frida McFadden. It is incredible. I've actually bought my mum this book and the first one for Christmas. She knows about it, so no spoiler, but I really want her to read it because she loves that sort of thing. And honestly, this book was absolutely incredible and I couldn't put it down. And these are only like 320 to 30 pages, so you get so much story and so many plot twists in a shorter space of time that it really keeps me interested. So I highly recommend these books. If you want to get into reading and you love a good thriller, I highly recommend these. They are so good. The next book I picked up was mine and Kelsey's book club pick of the month, and this month it was my turn and I chose Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score. Now, if you don't follow me and Kelsey over on our Instagram, make sure you do, because we're basically going to be doing the whole book club thing completely different next year, so make sure you follow us on there. The updates will be coming soon. We're really late to the party with this. I absolutely loved this so much. 5-star. Was so good. The whole family dynamic, I loved Waylay so much. I loved Knox. I loved, what was her name, Naomi. I absolutely loved every single character, and I thought they just all had such purpose in this book. The kind of found family aspect, I loved it. I think I genuinely had tears in my eyes reading this book, and it was just incredible. And essentially, a brief synopsis without spoiling it, you've got Naomi. She turns up in this really small town and everybody seems to think that she's her twin sister, and her twin sister isn't a very likable person. She's made a lot of mistakes and enemies in this town, so Naomi turns up and everyone's just giving her evils for no reason. She meets Knox within like the first few pages, and instantly you can see a connection, but without there being a connection, and he just looks out for her immediately, finds her somewhere to stay, and then Waylay turns up in the situation, who I won't spoil if you haven't read it. It's just honestly such a good book. I recommend it so much, and I cannot wait to read book 2 and book 3. I'm going to pick them up probably in January, because in December I am reading a lot of Christmas books, so I think in January I want to pick up book 2, but this was so good. 5-star. If you haven't read this, please read it and let me know what you think. It was quite chunky. I mean, it was nearly 500 pages, and originally I thought that is going to be far too long for a romance, but every page was valid and it was so good. I honestly loved it. It was incredible. The next book I picked up was The Summer Girl by Elle Kennedy, and I picked this one up to basically finish the Avalon Bay series. I absolutely loved this. This was a 5-star read again. It was so good. Cassie and Tate were just hilarious to read about. The spice was brilliant. Like, the banter was just so good that it was making me laugh out loud reading this, and I love a book that does that, so it was just incredible. And again, a brief rundown of this one. If you haven't read the first 2, it might not make so much sense, but you have Cassie, whose grandmother used to own the big hotel, and Tate is essentially one of the friends of like the big friend group that you read about. Cassie stumbles upon Tate one day when he's getting broken up with on the beach. They meet and they become friends, and there is definitely an initial spark straight away, but they both decide they want to be platonic and not be romantic with each other, which doesn't obviously last very long. It's just such a good book. Like, the ending was just so wholesome and I loved it. It was a 5-star read, as I said. These were my 2 favorite characters. I think I might even be inclined to reread this whole series. It was just so good and every character was just incredible. I love them all. So yeah, a 5 out of 5. If you haven't read this series, please do. I highly recommend it, and I just can't recommend it enough. It was just incredible. The next book I picked up was 6 Days by Danny Atkins, and I've not really heard a lot about this book, so I went in it blind, and I'm not gonna lie, it wasn't my absolute favorite. I gave this one a 2-star, and I think I just expected a lot more than I initially got, because essentially this book is about Gemma and Finn basically leaves Gemma at the altar, and you're just a bit like, where's Finn gone? And Gemma is adamant that he has not left her, like that something bad has happened, and everybody else is just saying, look, he probably just didn't want to get married, and Gemma's trying to figure out what happened. And you think it's going to be like a murder mystery slash thriller slash just mystery, not murder mystery, but you know what I mean, like a mystery book. And it's not really, it's just Gemma getting absolutely stressed for about 300 pages, and then to find out what actually happened, it was just very anticlimactic, which is why I gave it a 2-star. I just expected so much more, and I wanted there to be some incredible like plot twists as to what happened, but there wasn't. So I gave it a 2-star. I do feel bad. The cover is beautiful, like don't get me wrong, the cover is stunning, but I don't really have, there's nothing about this cover that links to the story whatsoever. So it looks like it would be a really cute book, but it's just like not. It was just a bit average and it wasn't my fave. So that's a shame, but I'm glad I read it. I do like the cover. If that's any consolation, the cover is beautiful. And the last book I picked up in November was A Love on the Brain by Ali Hazelwood. So I read The Love Hypothesis a few months ago as part of mine and Kelsey's book club, and I've been trying to get through a lot of the series that I've started. So this was one of those books I just wanted to get through, and I did actually really enjoy it. I gave it a 4-star. This one is about Bea and Levi, and the only thing about this that was annoying, and I kind of deducted a star for, was the obvious plot twists, I suppose. Like essentially what it's about is you've got Bea and you've got Levi. They're both scientists and they go to work on this project together, but Bea basically always thought that Levi hated her. Like he always gave her this really cold shoulder kind of vibe. He didn't, obviously. It's a love story, let's be honest, but it was very obvious he was trying to tell her that, but she kept like interrupting him and like shrugging it off as if to be like, it's fine, don't worry, like I know you hate me, and just kept saying that over and over again. There was also bits in it which I'm not going to spoil, but there's a part where you sort of find out near the start that Bea has got an online friend, and the person who it was incredibly obvious, and it was made to be this big old plot twist, but like it wasn't, because you kind of knew. It was very obvious when you were reading the conversation, like it was obvious who it was. But yeah, I love this story. There was a really good plot twist, like a bit of a dangerous vibe, and I really liked it. So a 4-star. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It wasn't my favourite, but I definitely would read it again, so I love that. So those are all of the books I read throughout November. I really hope you guys did enjoy this video, and I would love to know down below, what did you read? Did you love anything in particular? Did you hate any books in particular? I would love to know. And that is everything for today's video. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. I love you guys so much, and I will see you in my next one. Bye guys.
Take a look out the window. Spirit goes up as the rain falls down. I've been sailing on the wrong course, keeping it together.